I am now pleased to introduce Dr. Surya Acharya. Dr. Acharya is a senior research scientist at the Lethbridge Research Center. He has developed disease-resistant alfalfa, milk velch, and orchard grass. He has authored over 350 papers, including 3 books. Dr. Acharya is married with 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. He enjoys playing tennis. I'm so sorry, but there is no tennis balls in the silent auction. I now present Dr. Surya Acharya.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. I love talking about my work, so this would be, if you allow me, I can keep talking for hours here. But I was given only half an hour. Is that right? Okay. I'll try to stay within the time limit I'm given. Okay, I think I breed 7 or 8 different species of forage crops. Alfalfa is by far the most important of all, and probably those who are dealing with forage crops and cattle, they know the alfalfa is considered the queen of forages in Western Canada because it is well adapted and also it produces very high quality forage. But more importantly, if you feed alfalfa, it produces animal gains and milk better than any other forage crop. And that is the main reason why alfalfa is so important. But this important forage crop, or queen of forages, has a major drawback. It can cause pasture bloat. If you allow cattle to graze on fresh alfalfa, they can actually bloat, and within 15-20 minutes, half an hour, they can even die in extreme cases. If you don't know what bloat is, I think you can see on one side that frothy material alfalfa causes in the rumen, which causes bloat. And this is simply because if you don't want to get into too much technicalities, too much chemistry behind bloat, it is simply the fast release of soluble proteins into rumen fluid upon eating, and thickening of this rumen fluid. That's what it becomes a frothy mass, and this fermentation gas gets trapped in this frothy mass and thickened fluid and makes it foamy. And this trapped gas cannot be burped out or expelled at the other end of the animal. And that causes the animal to swell up, bloat, and in extreme cases, death can occur. But there is another crop which is not as utilized as much as alfalfa, and that is called Sanfoin, which has condensed tannins in the plant material. And these condensed tannin containing forage legumes such as Sanfoin do not cause bloat. So my way of thinking was, can we actually use this Sanfoin and grow it with alfalfa so that it becomes completely bloat-free? Because bloat is the main problem with alfalfa, and that is why most people don't graze their alfalfa stands with their cattle. Sanfoin, other than looking very nice, also has very high quality and also is fairly palatable for cattle. But the interesting thing then is, why aren't we using it? That is the question. Why is it not used for bloat prevention in alfalfa pastures? And these are the reasons why we do not see Sanfoin used with alfalfa for prevention of bloat. Number one is the available cultivars we have in Western Canada do not survive in mixed stands with alfalfa or regrow at the same rate after grazing is done. Although in the first grazing you will have Sanfoin, you release animal, they will have no bloat, but after that first grazing, if you release the animals again for second grazing, only alfalfa grows back. There is no Sanfoin, so you can lose some animals. Old Sanfoin cultivars do not have tolerance for frequent cutting or grazing. And although it is easy to establish, if you read the literature or go into the internet to learn about Sanfoin, you will always see that it never yields as much as alfalfa. Only about 75% you may get of alfalfa stand. So what we wanted to do is then change those characteristics in Sanfoin, which would allow us to use this Sanfoin in alfalfa stands so that it can be used in pastures. We have actually developed a number of populations of Sanfoin. I don't want to go into details of all the genetics and all the biometrical genetics and breeding work we had to do to develop these populations, but I will try to show you what we have developed is how much it is better than the existing cultivars. That is what I will talk about in the next few slides. Developing new populations is one thing, but then we have to also generate information that would indicate that our populations are better than the Czech cultivars or the old cultivars. And that was our main challenge. So what we did, after developing these, we tested them in different places. Lethbridge in the under rain-fed condition. I have highlighted some of these. You can see these, the highlighted lines only because these are big tables. You don't have to look through all the numbers. Just look at the 136% of Nova. Nova is the Czech cultivar of Sanfoin we were using, and which also AC Longview is the alfalfa cultivar there. In these tests, we saw some of these new populations are not only yielding as much as or yielding better than Nova, which is the old Sanfoin cultivar, but also yielding as much as alfalfa, which was never the case in all our experience or all the readings you may do in internet. Then looking at another study where we put them in under irrigation, it's the same thing. Those two new populations are yielding better than Nova and also yielding as much as some alfalfa cultivars. Now, our goal was to grow them together, alfalfa and Sanfoin together. So we had to do some competition experiments. And there, when we did that, we realized that if you grow alfalfa and Sanfoin in alternate rows, some new populations of Sanfoin can survive for longer time, and others, like Nova, will deplete very quickly. You can see Nova in the middle, although in the first year there was, this test was seeded in 2005. By 2007, we have already less than 20% Nova in the mixed stand, whereas some of our new populations are up to 45, 50%. And that is what we wanted to do through our selection. Looking at a little more in detail, I think if you look at in detail, you will see that the mixed populations, mixed yield for alfalfa Sanfoin mixed stands is always better than just alfalfa or just Sanfoin stands. So there is no doubt there. We can happily grow these together. The other important thing to see is whether in each cut or each grazing, we can see the same kind of Sanfoin growing back. And if you look at the last two, this was an experiment with 3 different types of alfalfa. The Nova was planted with Blue Jay, Grazeland, and Longview, 3 different types of varieties. And here you see in the second cut, the population has gone down. The composition of Sanfoin is way less than some of the new populations that have more than 50% still there. And so what I'm trying to say is the new Sanfoin populations produce higher proportion of dry matter in mixed alfalfa stands than Nova, and the variability is a lot more pronounced in the second harvest. In the first harvest, you may not see as much. And you don't even actually have to look at all these numbers. You can see them right in the field. If you have a camera, you can capture these. You can see some of these plots that look very green. They are Nova plots. The Sanfoin has gone out of the stand, whereas only you see alfalfa there. And the same thing you can see if you go closer. You can see Nova plus Grazeland. There is one plot, and there is another experimental population with long view. You can see a lot more long view. The pink flowers are Sanfoin, whereas green is just alfalfa. Sanfoin is a little bit earlier than alfalfa. That's why you can actually see this very easily. You can see another plot with Nova Grazeland, and this 3902 is now a new variety. It's called Mountain View Sanfoin. That has survived better than Nova. After that, this is not just in Lethbridge. I think we did this in Swift Current as well as in Saskatoon. This is the Saskatoon data. You can see that Nova there has gone down significantly in the third year. And that is why I'm saying that whatever we have selected for, we have actually achieved that. That means our Sanfoin populations are better than Nova, which is the old population of Sanfoin. Then our challenge was the new Sanfoin populations better than Nova in mixed alfalfa pasture stand, whether even animals should graze it. Sure, it's good, but would the animals eat it? So that's why we did some grazing trials, and there we actually, as a breeder, I have to show this yield data first before we show anything else. You can see the yield is no different in the first year. This was seeded in 2008. We didn't get the funding for 2009. That's why it was not grazed. It was just cut twice. And in the third year, to 2010 and 2011, we actually grazed it. And after grazing, you can see some of these new populations are actually significantly better than Nova. And that was 1 year. This is the second year. But the important thing is, I would like to show you whether the animals actually performed well in this mixed stand or not. You can see there was no difference among these populations when we directly grazed these stands, mixed stands with cattle. What that means is we don't have any trouble from the animal side. This is palatable enough. Animals are eating it. They are gaining as much as Nova, because the main idea is because when there is less Nova, that means more alfalfa. And that is what pure alfalfa stand would give you, about 1 kilogram per day gain for animal. And that is very good news in terms of animal productivity. And when we look at the proportions, there you can see the Nova by second year, to 2010, it was only 8% of the stand, whereas some of the newer populations, we had 25, 30%. Same thing even in the third year and fourth year. You can see 5% only Nova left. What that means is those populations, those mixed stands, have so few Sanfoin, but overwhelming majority was alfalfa. As I said in the beginning, alfalfa is by far the best for animal performance, and that is why we did not see any significant difference among alfalfa and Sanfoin. But I will show you interestingly. That was in Lethbridge. We did this in Swift Current. It's the same thing. We have a different breed of cattle, but it's the same. Animal gain was about 1 kilogram per day. So in terms of animal gain, there is no difficulty there. But when we look at the proportion of Sanfoin in Swift Current, we saw in the 2010, we saw some reduction, but in 2011, we did not even measure it because all the cattle were there the entire summer. we did not have a chance to measure. But interestingly, look at Lethbridge when we continuously grazed these stands. We did not take the animals out. It was not a rotational grazing, it was continuous grazing. Sanfoin survived way better, including Nova. That means Nova, which is adapted to a single cut system, is not showing any inferiority, or our new varieties that were selected for multiple cuts are not showing any superiority when we do not take multiple cuts. If we take it, if we keep on grazing it all summer, then they will not show any significant difference. Now, the main idea, we started with reducing bloat. Have we done that? Now you see, you saw one of the populations, Nova had 5%, whereas another population in the mixed stand had more than 25% Sanfoin. Now we did a grazing study directly on those, because this is for looking at bloat, we could not do anything without using fistulated cattle. That's why you can't use the same cattle that you use for determining animal performance for bloat study. For bloat study, you have to have fistulated cattle so that when they start bloating, you have to go and relieve the pressure. Otherwise, our animal care committee will not allow us to do this research. It is very, very important that we do this. And when you see that when we had about 50% Sanfoin, then we have no bloat. Almost, there was only one animal bloated in the second year, whereas in the first year, there were two animals bloated. And that is what I'm talking about. Whereas, in comparison, 98% animals bloated in the mixed stand where there was only 5% Sanfoin. So we started with the premise that our new populations that can survive better in mixed stand will prevent bloat is actually true. So under direct grazing, my conclusion from this is under direct grazing, a newly developed Sanfoin population prevented bloat as it survived in mixed stands with AC Blue Jay alfalfa in higher proportions than Nova for 3 to 4 years. And this does not happen just 1 year. This is up to 4th year we have already looked at it. So to summarize it, I would say that the newly developed Sanfoin populations can produce higher biomass yield than existing cultivars, and some have produced similar or higher yield than high-yielding alfalfa cultivars. Second, new Sanfoin populations can stay in the alfalfa pasture in good proportions for 3 to 4 years and produce enough biomass for preventing bloat all summer. The next summary is higher proportion of new Sanfoin population in mixed alfalfa pasture helped reduce bloat incidence and severity severity significantly. In mixed alfalfa stands, new Sanfoin populations produced as much average daily gain as Nova Sanfoin without causing bloat in grazing cattle. Actually, for our performance trial in Lethbridge, we had to use bloat guard because we were not sure whether these paddocks where we had only 5% Sanfoin will not cause bloat. That's why we use bloat guard, whereas in Swift Current, they did not use any bloat prevention methods or bloat prevention chemicals, but they had no bloat at all because they had higher proportion of Sanfoin there than Lethbridge. So I must acknowledge all the people, those who are involved with this study. One of them is Alan Iwasa from Swift Current. We had Bruce Coleman from Saskatoon involved in this, Tim McAllister, and Yuxi Wang. I also sincerely thank the funding agencies like ALMA, Beef Cluster, and Saskatchewan Ag Development Fund. As I'm getting old, I can become a little bit bolder and mention my thoughts about this. AFC A-base support was critical for development of new Sanfoin populations. Without additional support, this kind of data could not be generated or risks could not be achieved. Unless all involved in forage and cattle production find ways to improve funding for forage research, this type of collaborative work cannot be done in future. And that is my way of looking at it. Please think about it. The forages that are fed to cattle in our farms and things like that are always considered a low priority. And after me, I don't know whether there would be another forage breeder in Lethbridge. So with that, I conclude my talk. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Okay.
So just from a crop sky perspective, so Surya, is there any reason why you wouldn't graze straight Sanfoin? Like, so you're looking at mixtures, but what about straight Sanfoin?
Yeah, I would not stop grazing straight Sanfoin, but as you know, in most cases, Sanfoin will not give you the same kind of productivity what alfalfa does. So that is why I always feel that alfalfa Sanfoin mixed stands probably can give you better animal performance and for a longer period compared to pure Sanfoin. And also there is this feeling that everybody considers Sanfoin yields less, but we have these new populations are not yielding less. But at the same time, when you are buying seed, instead of putting 10 pounds of alfalfa per acre, you may have to put 30 pounds of Sanfoin per acre. Although seed is a very small cost of the entire seeding process, still for producers that becomes a major bottleneck. They think that this is too much, you are spending too much money for seed, and that is the reason why they may not be encouraged to do it. Rather, this is a mixed pasture would be much better to deal with in that sense. Any other questions?
How many producers use Sanfoin locally?
At present, there are very few producers using Sanfoin, but with these new cultivars, and there is tremendous interest. I think I'm actually training the trainers, we call it, in summertime for people to spread the word so that when the new variety seed is available, people can use it. Seed is not available yet. Mountain View variety will not be available until 2015. Last year we had a major hailstorm which took out all our breeder seed. We could not produce breeder seed. That's why the companies could not increase it significantly to sell it in the market. But in 2015, they should have some seed for selling in the marketplace. Any other questions? Thank you very much.